On the night of July 13th, 1991, in Meru, Kenya, a teenage girl was just trying to study for her final exams, but her world and the world of hundreds of other students was about to be shattered. What started as a student protest at a boarding school would spiral into one of the most horrific events in the nation's history. This is the story of the St. Kizito massacre. By the time the sun rose, this was the number that just stunned the country. 19. 19 teenage girls had lost their lives, not in a fire, not in some natural disaster, but at the hands of their own male classmate. And alongside that tragic loss of life, there was this number. 71 girls were brutally assaulted. 71 young women whose lives were just completely and irrevocably changed in a single night of absolute terror. So this is the central question, right? How on earth could a student dispute, something about school administration and cafeteria food, turn into mass violence? Well, the answers, it turns out, lie in the weeks and months leading up to that fateful night.
You know, a tragedy like this doesn't just materialize out of thin air. There was a slow burn at St. Kizito, this atmosphere of growing anger and resentment that the administration and authorities completely failed to address.
So let's break it down. This unrest didn't happen overnight. It started when a new principal, Mr. James Lieben, arrived, which kind of unsettled everyone. Then, these really creepy anonymous flyers started appearing on his door, with threats. On top of that, simple student demands, like getting eggs and milk from the school's own farm, were just flat out ignored. And the final spark? A humiliating sports trip, where the boys' team got sent home for not paying a fee. They were left feeling angry and totally disrespected. And these threats had a real gravity to them. We're not talking about idle complaints. This was menacing stuff. The principal, Mr. Laban, he actually reported all this tension and these flyers to the police, but it seems the matter was just dismissed. The warning signs were all there, flashing red, but they went unheeded.
And so we arrive at that Saturday night. Students had just finished their evening studies, a routine blackout hit, and the girls headed back to their dormitories, completely unaware that all those simmering tensions were about to explode.
Around 10 p.m., the silence of the night was just shattered by the sound of war chants. The girls, absolutely panicked, fled to a single dorm for safety. But this created a whole new danger. A space designed for 70 was now crammed with over 200 terrified girls. It became a death trap from the sheer crush of bodies, even before the boys broke in.
A survivor, who we'll just call Mary, remembers the moment the doors gave way. She saw the boys break through the barricades, dragging girls out into the darkness. Her testimony is a chilling, first-hand account of the chaos, giving a voice to the real human cost of what happened. For hours, the girls screamed, they prayed, they begged for help, but none came. They were completely isolated in their terror, a fact that would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. Help wouldn't arrive until 6 in the morning when the police finally showed up, and only then did the full scale of the horror become clear. As the nation just reeled in disbelief, the search for accountability began. But the path to justice, well, it would be fraught with its own set of disturbing realities. One of the most jarring images from the aftermath was this shocking contrast. On one hand, you have the accused boys photographed outside the courthouse, smiling, seemingly without a shred of remorse. On the other hand, their former classmates were in hospital beds, so traumatized that when they woke up from sedation, they'd start screaming and have to be sedated all over again. The contrast is just chilling. And beyond the physical injuries, there was this profound institutional failure. Survivors were just sent off to other schools to finish their exams, but the idea of counseling or psychological support, it wasn't even on the radar. They were left to carry this immense, crushing trauma all alone.
So, what happened in court? Well, in the end, prosecutors just couldn't prove a specific motive to kill. The deaths were attributed to suffocation from the stampede and the crush inside the dorm. Because of that, the charges got knocked down from murder to manslaughter, and only 10 of the accused were ultimately jailed. The St. Kizito massacre left an indelible scar on Kenya. It forced a national reckoning with student safety and discipline, and it led to some really significant, tangible changes in the education system. And that systemic change was real. In direct response to this tragedy, new, strict safety regulations for school dorms were enacted. I'm talking about things we might take for granted today, like having multiple emergency exits, no grills on windows, and rules against overcrowding. All of these were put into policy because of the lessons learned from that horrific night.
The school itself tried to shed its dark past by changing its name to St. Cyprian. The incident also sparked a much broader debate, which led to a policy proposal to abolish mixed-gender boarding schools altogether. It even led to the creation of a whole separate girls' school, St. Angela's, from the original institution.
But here's the thing. While policies and school names can be changed, the personal wounds, they remained. 34 years later, the survivors still carried those invisible scars. And to understand their journey is to really understand the nature of trauma itself. A clinical psychologist named Jacqueline Gaudu puts it this way. Trauma isn't just a bad memory. It fundamentally alters a person's sense of safety in the world. It forces them into this constant state of high alert, a defensive posture that just stays with them long after the actual danger is gone.
So how is that kind of trauma even managed? Well, experts like Gaudu suggest grounding techniques that engage the five senses. We're talking about simple acts like placing a hand on your chest, listening to calming sounds, or having a small bite of a comfort food. It's all about reminding the brain that the threat is no longer present and that it's safe to relax. It's a small but really powerful way to reclaim a sense of control.
Which brings us to our final lingering question. Today, the survivors are women in their 50s. The perpetrators who were jailed have served their time, and many others involved were never even charged. Their husbands, fathers, colleagues, they've just blended back into society. So for the women who carry that night with them every single day, what does justice even mean now? Is it punishment? Is it healing? Or is it something else entirely? It's a question without an easy answer, a wound that may never fully close.